I suppose that overnight success is a thing in some very specific cases, but typically an entrepreneur, what you see is you have a lot of emotional side that goes on, a lot of time that goes between the moment you create an idea, or you have an idea, you bring it to life, you conceptualize, and then you actually launch, and then you actually, it finally takes off. There is a lot of time that goes, in between those two, from start to success, correct? And usually people see, the tip of the iceberg, and they don't see everything that goes behind the scenes.
So today we're filming a special episode here at the Kimpton Epic Miami Hotel in South Florida. A special series as part of Gents Talk, and we got with us Nico Norena. My guy, how are you?
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, man. I know we've been talking a little while. I was bothering you while you were on a honeymoon.
No, yeah. Well, I don't consider that bothering, honestly. I thought
you were going to say you don't consider it a honeymoon.
No. It was definitely a honeymoon. It was a beautiful one, too, let me tell you.
Where'd you go?
Incredible. We were very blessed. We did Maldives and Dubai.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Which ones do you like better?
It depends, man. Dubai is more of like Miami city, very, technology and beautiful high rises, extremely hot, but really, really cool. Lots of awesome restaurants, which is right up my alley. But then you have Maldives, which is this beautiful paradise with turquoise waters and, incredible hotels, and everything's picture perfect all the time. Right. So I'd say that it depends on what you're looking for. I personally love both. I think it has to be a healthy combination of one and then the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just got married.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Correct. Thank you.
You run a company called the Succulent Bite.
Correct.
You've been doing that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
For the people who know you by that page but don't know who Nico Norena is, what's the backstory there?
On Succulent Bite?
On you.
On
me? Who are you? Who's the man behind the persona?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about me briefly. I was born in Chicago. My parents are from Colombia and from the U.S. I grew up in Madrid in Spain. And then I moved over to Miami 15 years ago. I've grown up, luckily, traveling the world since I was little with my mom. She used to take me on these beautiful trips across the different countries. And so I grew up eating around the world, right? I grew up involved in multiple different, surrounded by different cultures and different foods. And that's what kind of sparked my interest in culinary from the get-go. Yeah. My grandma as well, she used to cook these delicious meals at home. So I was always in the kitchen, with her, learning whatever I could and participating as much as I could from a young age, correct? So that's kind of how I started forming who I am today as a human being, and what you see today on the brand, reflected on the brand.
So tell me about the brand. It's a combination of a social media page, but you do a lot more than what people just see online. Mm-hmm. Walk us through sort of the entrepreneurial side of things.
In what sense?
So you're essentially an entrepreneur.
Correct.
Right. So what was that transition like? Because you weren't always an entrepreneur.
Correct.
You moved into that.
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen?
So initially I started Succulent Bite during college, but while I was at college, I was also working at a marketing consulting firm, which taught me immense amounts of information and best practices in the marketing world. From there, I kept working on Succulent Bite in parallel, and I moved over to a pharmaceutical company where I worked in sales for 5 years. I did very good at the company as well, and then I decided to take the leap and become a full-time Succulent Bite. So in order to get there, I think that there was a lot of preparation that went, on. Not only the structure side of it, so, making sure that the company was, or the Succulent Bite, my own company, was structured and it was following all the necessary guidelines. I was having, the clients, the recurring clients, I had a vision and a good strategy for the growth of the company. And then is when I finally said, okay, after 5-6 years into it, I finally said, okay, now it's time to finally take the step in that direction and apply everything I've learned in the marketing world, in the sales world, because pharma sales teaches you a lot about sales and a lot about customer relationship management and a lot of how to manage your time and manage a schedule. And that's what I applied into the Succulent Bite. And that's when I decided, okay, when everything was kind of in line and in order, I said, it's time to take the step. But it was a very calculated decision. It wasn't, an overnight thing that I was like, okay, tomorrow. No, I had been, macerating and cooking that for years until I finally said, okay, now I can do it.
And I think that's the interesting point is a lot of people mistake the concept of entrepreneurship. Like you're just going to jump into a new business model or you're going to just start a new business tomorrow and all of a sudden expect to skyrocket. Yeah. I think a lot of people sometimes don't understand that it takes time.
I agree.
To build towards something. And I agree. And that's what happened here.
I agree. I think that I suppose that overnight success is a thing in some very specific cases, but typically an entrepreneur, what you see is you have a lot of emotional side that goes on, a lot of time that goes between the moment you create an idea or you have an idea, you bring it to life, you conceptualize, and then you actually launch, and then you actually, it finally takes off. There is a lot of time that goes, in between those two, from start to success, correct? And usually people see, the tip of the iceberg, and they don't see everything that goes behind the scenes. And that's I think what's going to differentiate a successful entrepreneur is going to be the person who can actually stick through those ups and downs emotionally, stick through the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, which I'm sure we'll touch on throughout the podcast, right? Yeah. And can actually come up successful on the other side. And if they don't come out successful, then learn from that mistake and go again and hit it again on a different angle, different product, different idea, whatever it is that they're creating. But be consistent and be there. Yeah.
So let's go to the imposter syndrome piece there. Again, the concept of overnight success. People think unless you've somehow gotten X number of followers or sold X number of dollars worth of things or products or services, that you're failing. You're an imposter ultimately. Mm-hmm. How did you deal with the imposter syndrome of going from a corporate style job to suddenly being on your own?
Well, look, my definition of imposter syndrome, I think that's the correct one, right? Is when you're self-doubting yourself when you're filled with self-doubt and you believe you might not be good enough for what you're doing.
Yeah. Like you shouldn't be there.
Correct. Yeah. So you don't belong. How did I overcome that? I think that there's a variety of things. One, I think you have to be very, very intentional in what you want to accomplish and have clear goals in mind. Two, I think you have to listen to other people and learn from other successful people who have already gone through that and learn from them and see, hey, how did they go through it? So, for example, you mentioned something very interesting, and it's those key metrics, right? Those metrics, the how many followers, the how much are you making, and those are not necessarily the only metrics that matter in order to be able to overcome, or become successful as an entrepreneur, right? For example, it took me 1 year to get to my first 10,000 followers. Then it took me another 3 years to get to 500,000, and then in the next 2 years, boom, skyrocketed onto new realms that when I started 6, 7 years, 8 years ago, I might have not even imagined or dreamed of, right? Yeah. So I think it's being able to persevere through those ups and downs, through that self-doubt, understand that you do belong. You do belong. If you believe in your idea and you're staying true and authentic to what you're creating, I think that you belong. And you remind yourself of that. Have some self-love, some self-care, and I think it's also important. I was very lucky to have my family who always believed in me, who always supported me, said, no, man, keep going. You got this, And I personally looked at myself in the mirror and I still do to today's date. I have affirmations that I do in the morning, and I look at myself in the mirror and I say, I'm successful. I am capable. I can do this, and because if I don't remind myself, then I can't rely on others to do so for myself. Right. I have to do it myself. And yeah, that's kind of
incredible. So what happens on the days where the affirmations are not working, you're not feeling yourself, a deal's gone bad or something didn't work out? What happens there? Like, how do you work through those moments?
Again, going back to the clear goals and the commitment that you have from the beginning, it's just, I personally, I suck it up. I say, you know what? Yes, I can do this. let's just keep going and learn from whatever I need to learn and keep pushing, right? And it's just not allowing that little voice in your head that starts, speaking things that it shouldn't be speaking in your mind, saying, maybe you're not, so good as you think you are. Well, you know what? Quiet that voice and keep going. And that is just kind of hardcore for me. Like that, I just say, obviously there's days where it's a little harder than others.
Yeah.
But I'd say power through, and disregard it if possible, and just kind of, keep at it because you need to push yourself. Consistency.
Yeah.
Correct.
Which I think people often mistake. Like, so my the way I see things is a lot of people are waiting to be motivated to do something, but they don't sometimes understand that you're not going to just automatically wake up motivated. You have to do the work to go and get motivated. You're building a habit and you're building that consistency and that discipline that ultimately leads you to becoming self-motivated, because you have it, like you wake up and it's an automatic day after day after day. You're stacking days.
I agree. And going back to what you're saying, I mean, I think that there's a line that I really like that says discipline will take you places where motivation can't. And I think that
I like that one.
I think is very powerful because it goes hand in hand with what we were just discussing about the days where you're not sure if you're going to be able to achieve what you need to achieve. And that's where really discipline has to kick in, because that's where you really are going to hold yourself accountable. You're really going to push hard. Because like you said, self-motivation, you'll eventually get to self-motivation, but there's days that even when you do have it, you don't, so that's when you say, you stay disciplined, you stay focused, and you stay consistent.
No, awesome. What advice would you, if you were starting over, what advice would you give your younger self? Or what advice would you give yourself if you were starting over, rather?
If I was starting over, I think I'd say be more consistent at the beginning. I mean, I was pretty consistent.
Yeah.
I really was. But obviously, if I had the vision that I have now, I would be at this.
You'd be where you are now, but sooner.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, that's not a really fair thing for me to say. So I'd say take bigger risks, and be a little more aggressive at the beginning to be able to catalyze growth faster, right? But I also started when I was 21, right. and the 21-year-olds of today are a lot more advanced than the 21-year-olds of my generation, right? I mean, I just turned 30, and technology was different, social media was completely different. It's a different landscape, right, than what we see today. So at the end of the day, you have to, again, give yourself props for what you've achieved. I'd say that knowing what I know today, yes, be a little more risk taker and a little more aggressive in achieving what I want to achieve faster.
Yeah. What is it about entrepreneurship, at least from your lens, that people oftentimes misunderstand or they mistake? Like they have this incorrect notion of what to expect from entrepreneurship, because a lot of people glamorize it, right? Mm-hmm. Like they glamorize the lifestyle of, I'm going to, wake up, I'm going to do a couple of deals, a couple of meetings, I'm going to chill by the pool. And then they actually don't really realize that you're working super long hours, 7 days a week sometimes. There's a lot of sacrifices. Mm-hmm. What's your take on that?
I have to say that there is a lot of commitment that goes when you're an entrepreneur. I believe that, like you say, it's not all the glam that people think of it to be. It's very easy to see, once again, what you see on a screen or the idea that you may have of a certain concept. Nevertheless, don't mistake that for all the hard work, the longer hours. For example, when I started, I worked my full-time jobs, and then I went overtime and worked on my own projects, right, Succulent Bite, until maybe 1, 2 in the morning, 3, 4 times a week, and I had the energy to do it, right? And then I woke up the next day and I hit the ground running again for my full day job, and then I went again. And at the beginning, that looked, like going to film at restaurants after work, exhausted. I didn't want to do absolutely anything else, but I said, no, I need to bring this to life. So, I went and I changed at home, and then I put on the different pair of clothes and whatever. And then I went out again after a full day of work. and filmed at 2 locations, and then edited the videos myself, and then emailed proposals for new opportunities and pitched different agencies. I mean, it was nonstop. So yes, I think that especially at the beginning, while you get the machine running,
Yeah.
you are going to work an excessive amount of hours, but that's very important in order to be able to build the structure for that machine, which eventually will allow you to live a certain lifestyle. Yes, that is true. That is true. For example, I mean, sometimes you wake up and you have a slower morning than other days. You know, for example, this morning, for example, I woke up, I had a cup of coffee, went to the gym, wellness, right? Things that are important to me. Had my apple cider vinegar with lemon and a cup of hot water, you know, because yeah, that's part of it. 100%.
I've heard about apple cider vinegar.
It's very good, man. I suggest it. I recommend it. And then I started working. I started my day today at 11 in the morning, right? I started my first emails started going out at 11 a.m., for example, today. But yesterday, I was up at 7:30 in the morning, and I started filming my recipe for the day, which was a campaign, a huge campaign that I started actually filming at 10:30 in the morning, but I started prepping since 9:30, and I finished at 6 p.m. So that's 8 hours of full on filming. And I stopped at 6 p.m. only to then export all those videos, send them to my editor. So really, I worked until probably 9 p.m. And that's another typical day in the life as well.
Yeah.
But that's, again, something that not everybody sees.
They
So
just see the finished product.
Exactly. They see the finished product. They see the really fun trip. But what they don't see is all the sacrifice and all the commitment and all the long hours. And it takes, it takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes consistency. And yeah.
Why is wellness so important in your line of work?
I think that, well, I mean, for me specifically, wait, what do you mean?
Like, why is it such like, a lot of people don't prioritize wellness, taking care of themselves, giving themselves a break.
Mm-hmm.
Why, from your perspective as someone who just said you do that, you actively do it, why is that so important?
For me, it was a lifestyle change. I didn't necessarily keep it so much in mind at the beginning, and I'm just putting that out there so that I can then, come to my answer, which is, when I began creating recipes at home, for example, I was eating cheesecake every single day during the pandemic, right? So every single day, slice and a half of cheesecake. What happened? I gained some weight. My cholesterol went up a little bit because, hey, everything has to be in moderation, which is what I always tell my fans is like, guys, everything in moderation. The fact that you're seeing desserts every day doesn't mean that you should be eating desserts every single day. That's just content that I'm putting out there for you to create at home, share with your friends and family sorry, I blanked.
Like at a regular human pace.
At a regular human pace, correct. So not the way I was consuming at home, because I was filming every single day, correct? So why is wellness important for me? Because I think that without health, you can't really build anything else, right? Health has to be your utmost priority all the time. Also, stress comes a lot with being an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. And stress manifests in lots of different ways. Back pain, chronic back pain, not being able to sleep well, being anxious throughout the day. So being able to work on that is a priority for me now, because it affects also your performance in your day-to-day life with your friends, with your family, with your business. So what are some of the things I personally do to maintain that balance is, well, now we work out almost every single day. In the mornings, we have time allocated in the day to in my house with my wife, right? To talk about how we're feeling in the day, to enjoy each other's company, just sit down and watch the sunset one afternoon. So all that takes part into what wellness really is for me. Keeping a balanced diet, which is something I think I've always done, but it's very easy to deviate from that in my line of work, right?
Right.
So, being able to say, okay, although I'm filming most of the days of the week, that doesn't mean I'm going to be eating in massive amounts everything that I'm creating, which pops the question, what do you do with everything that you create, right? Because I get that a lot. So it's like, does it go to waste? No, the answer is no. And I give that out to the staff in my building, friends, family, everything in moderation for everybody. And then it's okay. So that's kind of how I tackle wellness, and why it's so important for me is because I think that you need to achieve a balance and homeostasis as much as possible, and be a well-rounded version of yourself as much as possible.
Yeah. Is there something that you don't do that you want to start taking on to improve?
Yes, I do want to start doing yoga and meditation.
How come?
Yes. And I'm sure, I don't know if that's something that a lot of people answer. I personally think that I was just recently in our honeymoon, we did a yoga class, and I realized how stiff I am. I am very non-flexible, and I'm not. Yeah, and I realized that my back, the back pain that I've been having lately is because of lack of elasticity, and because of the position that I'm in all day
time,
when I'm
right?
filming. And the yoga instructor at the hotel where we're at, he said, Nico, you need to be stretching more. You need to be allocating time of the day for this. You're not sleeping enough. You need to allocate time to meditation and be able to, or meditation or any other form of calming yourself down before going to bed in order to be able to get a good night's sleep and good rest, right? And so those are some of the things that I want to work on right now.
I want to go back to the succulent bite for a second. Mm-hmm. You were working in marketing, and then you were doing this on the side.
Yes.
How did you scale it? I think a lot of people are, myself included, always trying to better understand how businesses get scaled to the point where now there's just recurring income, recurring projects, recurring work. You're bringing on new staff. How did you, what was that transition moment? How did you get there?
The first thing I did was hire an editor who would edit all my videos. So he's an awesome guy who does an outstanding job. And that's something that for me was immensely liberating, because it allowed me to take back a lot of time that I would usually allocate. So for example, a video usually it took me maybe 6 hours to edit. Just by sending it to him, I'm already getting back 6 hours of my week, for that one video, which allows me to then put it onto another series of projects that I'm working on, or more content for the page, or, XYZ, more quality time at home with the family, or whatever it is, right? So that was one. Another one was delegating work in other areas. So for example, I have a design team that I work with when I need creatives and stuff like that I hire as well on a per contract basis, which helps me a lot.
Sure, that's thunder.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. yeah, it was pretty intense.
The weather here in Miami is a little bit finicky.
It's a little finicky. Yeah.
This morning it was raining, and then it was super sunny, and now it's thunder.
And now it's thunder again. Yeah, this is how it is. It's just how it is. You never know. I think that comes with time as well. And once you prove your worth to the brands, the agencies that are there sourcing for influencers. So for example, I've worked hard on building, or intentionally on building good relationships with the agencies that I've been fortunate to work with, right? So being able to do that, plan, or taking conscious action on that end allows you to be scalable, in the sense that you're going to have more incoming business on the longer run. So for me, it's all about providing the best customer experience to my customers, or my clients, or the brands I work with, or the agencies, because I really want them to A, see my worth, B, value what I do, because, I think that what I do, what I create has immense value. And I think they see that as well. And being able to be recurrent and have recurrently work with these brands is ultimately, the ultimate goal and the ultimate, blessing, if you will.
Yeah.
So in terms of scalability, it's customer relationship, hiring a team as much as possible, and then or delegating work wherever you can. And then for me also, my wife, Ariana, she's helps me tons with Succulent Bite, tons. I maybe should have started with her, because honestly, she's the one that's there cheering me on. She's there holding the camera when I need the camera to be held. She's there pitching me new ideas. She's like, hey, Nico, what you should do for your next video, because I saw this and it's trending. Maybe you should try this out. And I'm like, this is cool, right? So being able to bounce ideas off somebody else, that's all part of scalability, and that's all a part of, freeing up your time and mental space.
Why is it so important to have someone so close in your circle be that supportive and sort of so complimentary to everything you're trying to do?
Well, because the opposite is even worse. Yeah. Imagine having okay, so let's put the two scenarios. We have A, in one hand, the person who doesn't have somebody and is, or maybe three scenarios, and it's just all self-motivation or, dedication and consistency, and you just have to, that person has to do it all on his own or her own. Okay. Then you have the other scenario where you have a person who is not aligned with the person they live with, for example, or their couple, their whoever that is. If they have somebody that's just pulling them back, then it's even harder for them to progress. But then you have scenario 3, which I believe is the way to go if possible, and that's having somebody who is there to support you, and who's there to cheer you on. And I'm not saying be dependent on that, because you have to keep yourself accountable for yourself. But I am saying it definitely helps in getting you through times that maybe you need a little extra push, or you need a pat on the back, or you need a fresh new idea, or you need somebody just to sit down and listen to what you have to say, and then just kind of, be there for you. And I think that everybody needs that one person or a group of people. Sometimes it's a group of people, but
do you have a lot of people in your circle?
Not a lot. I'm a closer circle, closed. I'm a smaller circle kind of guy.
Yeah. Why?
The reason why is because not everybody is aligned with your goals, and not everybody is aligned with your ambition. And sometimes there's conversations that you can have with people who you think they have your best interest in mind, and maybe they don't. And that energy, that negativity, that I try to stay away from that as much as possible.
Could be draining.
It could be very draining.
Yeah.
It could be very draining. And think about everything we've discussed so far. And then on top of that, you have people who are pulling you back. No, man. I mean, it's already hard enough.
Hard to move forward.
Exactly. Yeah. It's already hard enough doing it and succeeding at it and keeping at it. Imagine having to add that extra layer of, so wherever you can optimize good energy, good vibes, good. I try to surround myself with people like that. But the people that I actually speak to about my business and my emotions and are very few. My mom, my wife, select friends, 2 or 3 who I actually call and be like, hey man, so this happened. And they'll be there. But it's in a handful of people, really.
Yeah. Well, it's important to have that small circle of people that you can trust in your network, people that you could bounce ideas off of, people that you could rely on, people that if there's something that's not working, you can turn to and say, hey, this is not working.
Yes.
What's the advice? And the advice is coming from a good place. It's
exactly.
coming from a place that actually wants to see you succeed, not from a place of we're going to give you sort of fake advice or false advice and secretly hope that you fail.
Or that are going to go and take that information and just macerate on it and just put bad vibes into it, and then just kind of and then gossip about it with other people. That's not the kind of things you want to stay away from, if you ask me. Yeah.
So what's next? Like, what are you envisioning happens next for you, for Nico, and for Succulent Bite?
Well, I currently am working with Ariana on a consumer good product, which is coming out hopefully this year. That's what we're aiming for. We've been working on it for a couple of years already, so we're very, very excited for that. I will not disclose more until very soon because, but hey, maybe when the podcast airs, it'll already be launched. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
But that's something that we are working on. And the reason why, again, is to have that second company that we're working on together, if you will. So
an alternative stream of income.
Correct.
Which is super important.
Correct. Yes.
Especially as an entrepreneur, because sometimes, that one main source of income doesn't always come through.
Yeah,
and it's not the same amount. It's not on the same day. And
I agree. It's important to always have multiple different streams of income. That's definitely another reason why we're doing it. A goal with that is to build the future for our kids, for example. It's a company that we're building that we hope, obviously it's a lot of work and there's a lot of to be done. But that's something that we pray that will provide for the rest of for the family for generations to come. Yeah. So, again, going back to ambition, entrepreneurship, that's what we're aiming for. And then what else? No, I mean, right now I'm really focused. I'm really focused on that. Obviously, keep Succulent Bite growing. Keep enlarging. Keeps up. Obviously keep Succulent Bite growing, keep growing my audience, keep giving them content that they love, keep working with these beautiful, awesome brands that I've been able to work with throughout the past years currently and in the future. And yeah, man, just staying focused on those areas and expanding. I think it's important to expand. I'm not going to say fast, but I'm going to say at a smart pace with
Why?
cadence, because when you I in my experience, when you try to do too much at the same time, you end up not doing it well. And in today's day and age where everything has to be quality and well thought of and curated, and again, it's going back, for example, take a clear example of content. For example, content these days, everybody can create content, so it's quality content what you really need to be putting out, right? It's not just some no, it's you have to curate it. You have to make sure that it's good, that you study it. How does your audience react to it? So the same way, the same approach that you create content with is what I create my future companies with. Is one at a time, structured, and then oil that machine well so that it runs like we said at the beginning. It'll have to take hours extra of your day and of your week, and it might be at the beginning, especially if it's something that you've never done before. For example, it'll be our first time launching a CPG. I've never done that before. I've worked with tons of CPG companies, but I've never launched my own. CPG, consumer
product good.
Yeah,
I see. Okay.
So being able to bring that to life, it is going to take a lot. So it needs my full attention. Well, part of my attention, right? Because the other part has to be on Succulent Bite. Yeah. But that's why I say one at a time, but doing it well. And especially like Gary Vee says, being very patient and understanding that it takes time, but good things take time. And when you're tenacious and you go at it, then you'll eventually succeed as well. So, yeah.
Is there, when you say being patient, it's not an easy thing to do.
Correct.
Because you see what's possible and you just want to jump into it. You want to go to the next thing. You want to go to the next thing. What's next? How much more can I take on all at the same time?
Right.
And then you tend to, people in general will tend to take on more than they can actually do. And to your point, they don't end up doing everything very well. They kind of half-ass everything.
Correct.
How do you keep yourself disciplined in that way?
In not taking too much at the same time, or in being patient?
Both.
Well, I think that, man, it's hard. Let me tell you, it is hard.
I imagine it would be.
Especially because as an entrepreneur, you're the common trait is ambition, and you want everything to happen and you're excited for it. So it's not necessarily impatience. I call it myself excitement. It's just that it's excitement that can put you in a place where you're becoming patient. So how do I deal with that? I really try to understand and bring myself down and say, or not bring myself down, but make myself calm and say, okay, it's a step at a time. Remember how it was with the first company you started, which is Succulent Bite. Remember how it took days and then weeks and then years, but you already have that experience. So it'll be a lot faster now because it's the second time we're doing something or I'm doing something. But now I bring in all of that experience, but it still takes time because it still takes time to build and construct. So I just try to remind myself. We try to remind ourselves, my wife and I, Ariana, since we're working on that company together, and that it takes time, that we're learning as we go. We try to remember to enjoy the journey as much as we're going to enjoy getting there. Because in the journey is where you really learn. In the journey is where you really get those nuggets that are going to help you succeed with whatever you do in the future. Is where you meet your network, is where you build those relationships, those structures for the company that you're beginning to build. And when you take all of that into consideration, then okay, it's going to take time. But there's a plan, an action plan, which we're executing and we're getting there. And there's a roadmap and we're executing it. So rest assured, we'll get there. It's just... take a deep breath,
putting a plan together, and but also enjoying the moment, enjoying the journey, getting to that final destination.
Exactly. And it's tough because sometimes it's a matter of, the manufacturer is taking 2 weeks to respond. So you're just like, I needed them to respond, So it's obviously, that obviously will affect, but being able to understand it's all part of the process. If it was easy, everybody would have done it already. That's something we say a lot. So yeah.
Are you seeing a change in the way people are consuming content, especially as a content creator yourself, built from when you started to where you are now? Are you seeing a difference in how people want to consume their content?
I'd say that In what sense? Like, for example, long format, short
Well,
format kind
like,
of thing?
are you noticing a specific trend? I mean, from my perspective, we do a podcast series and it's meant to be long form, but we have to create short form clips,
Correct.
to attract the people who prefer to receive things in bite-sized formats. Are you noticing anything like that from your perspective?
Yes and no at the same time. I think what I've seen the most is short, for example, was work for me at least. Short form, very informative and filled with substance, not something that's very light and that doesn't have a lot of substance.
Yeah.
Um, Easy to replicate or entertaining, and across different channels. That's one that I for sure have begun. I began doing a couple years ago, and that was posting my content across all different platforms, not only Instagram and Facebook, but TikTok and YouTube Shorts, and even Snapchat sometimes. And the reason why is because there is a different audience with different demographics in each platform, and it's extremely important to be able to cater to all of them. So how do they consume in each platform? That's a different story. So for example, Instagram, I see that people like to see substance and relatable and replicable. TikTok, for example, I tend to see a little more entertainment. So something that maybe it doesn't have to be like, for example, the full recipe with all the details and how you cook them. Maybe that works, but maybe something a little more lighter and just kind of showcasing final product and just beauty shots.
Yeah.
That works a lot too. For
Yeah.
example, for TikTok, YouTube Shorts goes a lot with what I see on Instagram, but YouTube long form, that's its own thing.
Yeah.
I personally don't or haven't begun doing YouTube long form, but it's something that I definitely want
It's
to
hard,
do.
man.
It is hard. No, it is very hard, and,
Yeah.
and my I have huge admiration for the YouTubers who manage these incredible long form videos that keep you engaged from start to finish. I bow down because I find that admirable. So
Yeah.
I would like to get to that. For example, going back to what's next for Succulent Bite, that's something that I would like to do as well. Long form video. So focusing on that as well. And for example, you see then Facebook, you have a similar audience that you would on Instagram in the sense of how they consume the content. However, it tends to be an older audience. So you see that in the comments. For example, they comment things like, "Oh, I'm going to share this with my grandkids," or "Oh, I'm definitely taking this one to the next holiday party." I mean, I don't know. It's a different vibe,
Yeah.
which I personally love because you can put out similar content, but just showcase it to a completely different audience and interact and engage with them in a different way, in a different language, or not a different language, or a different, it's called verbatim, if you will, or
Yeah.
the way you chit chat in between your fans and yourself.
Yeah. Awesome. Nico, thank you so much for coming through, brother.
No, of course,
This
man.
was awesome.
I appreciate you.
And I'm excited to see all the cool stuff you're
Yeah.
going to be doing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's honestly so fun to be able to do this together.
Yeah.
And
Well, when we were talking before, we were talking about how, a lot of times, you're spending so much time creating these short form videos, but there's not always a lot of opportunities to really get to know Nico, the person behind
correct.
what they're seeing online.
Correct.
And so I think this was a great opportunity just to have a conversation and like get to know who you are and some of the journey of getting to where you are today and hearing about what's coming up next and what you're working on and, the relationship with Ariana and how that's going and like how that, helps motivate you to, to continue building, which I think is super inspirational. I think everybody wants to have that kind of a support system.
I agree with you. I agree with you. It's definitely a blessing, and it's not something I take for granted ever because, again, like you say, it's not something that necessarily happens just because. So I consider myself lucky. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, man, as always.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.